Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Good morning. Welcome back to our next episode of the hashtag mental health series. And today, I want to follow up on last week's episode about some statistics and that one stat where I mentioned that less than 50% of people who need mental health services actually seek it out. And I wanted to today talk about why that is. So, what is the stigma about mental health? Why do people not seek it out? And how can we change that? So I think that fact is absolutely true. And I know that because I certainly have people that come into my office, but I certainly have people that contact me with questions that some might consider mild, that everyday questions of, how do I communicate better? Or sometimes I get a little bit angry or I feel stressed or I have difficulty sleeping. And some of these things you could argue that, okay, you don't have to seek services for, although they could be beneficial. But then I get big, heavy questions of like, my child is using drugs, or I think I'm about to go through a divorce, or, I lost my job because I feel so sad or depressed or whatnot. And these are the ones that most people think about when they think about mental health services. But I wanted to talk about some of the barriers and some of the obstacles that people feel about mental health services and clear that up. So one of the biggest ones is stigma, the idea that people will feel that you're crazy, that you're weak in your faith, or that you're a weak-minded person, or that you'll be embarrassed or ashamed. So I've already given you some statistics about how our mental health is very important, how sometimes if we don't take care of it, kind of like a car, kind of like your physical body, that it starts to break down. So this is something that's very common. You can read about it all the time. Many people have come out and talked about how your mental health matters and that therapy can actually be beneficial. So one of the biggest issues is that stigma of going into an office. Now, one thing that's important to remember is if you do seek services, right, everything is confidential. Everything is anonymous. So when you come in and you go behind that therapy door, what you say is between you and the therapist, for the most part, without some certain situations to where we have to keep people safe. But if you feel like the therapist is going to call your house or tell your parents or this or that, a good therapist would say to you, no, whatever we talk about is between me and you. And if I feel like, if you're a teen, if I feel like this is something mom or dad should know, then we'll talk about that. But if you're an adult, you're the one who controls what's been communicated and what's not going to be communicated from your session to other people. So even if you're an adult and you have like a desi auntie, or your mom is one of those typical aunties that wants to know everything about you, if they call my office, I would say, Auntie, I'm sorry, you can keep yelling or you can come down here, but I'm not going to give you any information. I'm not even going to tell you if this person is coming here. So one of the biggest things, and if you're licensed, it's the therapist's ethical duty to not share that information if you don't want it. And if they do, there are licensure boards that you can go to and you can complain. So we take it very seriously, your privacy, your respect, and your confidentiality. Another thing is people feel like it's not going to work, right? Like, what's it going to matter? We're just going to talk. How's that going to fix the thing? But as I said before, 80 to 90% of the people feel like therapy has been successful for them, that it's helped them in some way. So that's actually just a negative thought you have in your mind. And it's kind of feeding that fear of going into a psychological clinic or going for an appointment to keep you from going. Another reason people don't come is because it costs money. And that's a reality. It does cost money. But there are certainly people and therapists that take insurance, so that can heavily offset the cost of an appointment, of a session. It could be $10 or $20. Or there are also people that provide services for free. There are clinics in your communities. There are universities and counseling centers that give you a huge discount. And there are also people in your community that maybe they're not licensed, but maybe they could be a great support. Maybe an imam or a religious leader or someone that you trust or that you feel has a good character. And then, so that's to kind of say, yes, there are barriers, but there are ways around it. And then one of the last ones is you feel like your problem's not big enough. So how do you know if you should go? Well, one, if it's affecting your relationships, if you have work, if it's affecting your work, if it's affecting how you feel about yourself, or how difficult or easy it is to just go through your daily activities of showering, if it's affecting your appetite, your sleep. These are all ways And you kind of know deep down in your heart if it's having a big effect, if you really think about it. And I think the last thing I want to say is that, as Muslims, we try to strive to live like the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but even as non-Muslims, we try to live in a good way, right? And to live and connect with people. And even in the Prophet's life, he had moments where he struggled. He had moments where he sought support. Obviously, there weren't any psychologists back then that I know of. I might be wrong. But he had moments where he sought the support of his wife, of his companions, and not in the sense of he was breaking down, but in the sense of he was going through some negative things. He was having some struggles, right? There was some weight on him, and he sought support. And we have lots of stories that support that. So if it's good enough for the Prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, it's good enough for you. So think about it that way, to where this is not you that's weak or that's hurt. This is you actually showing strength and saying to someone, hey, I need some help. Like, I'm struggling with this thing, whether it's depression or anxiety or a decision, and I'm going to go get some help to make sure I do the right thing for me, inshallah. So thank you for joining us this week, and we'll continue on this series next week, inshallah, Monday morning.